Power Conference football. Who gets kicked off the island? Realignment week, realignment month continues here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you stopping by. Please give us a like and subscribe. Best discussion, debate, and analysis based on your participation. We appreciate the comments down in the comments section. We have taken in your many realignment models. They've been interesting, and certainly keep them coming. Let's get to this topic because we have yet to see it in the history of college football. However, could we see it in the possible cutthroat nature and approach going forward? Never has a conference kicked out a school, but we have seen since 2012, 19 different schools say, I've got a greener pasture somewhere else. And we're talking about from a power conference to power conference. That doesn't even include the likes of Group of Five schools elevating to the Power Five. Of course, SMU is the most recent example. That's 19 that have left power conference for power conference just since 2012. So who's to say that if the loyalty doesn't run in that direction, that the conferences won't at some point say, you are not living up to our expectations. You are not a valuable commodity. You are not worth it. They may be worth it. You are not worth it. You're out. Especially if the Big Ten and the SEC swallow up all of college football and determine who is a valuable commodity to us and who is not, who is unproductive, whether it be totaling in the football with the media popularity, the eyeballs that that particular football program draws to the streaming devices and to television, of course. Vanderbilt, Indiana, what do they bring to the table? They bring to the table tradition. They bring to the table that they've got a brand that's already in place. Now, of course, we're just talking strictly football. Indiana, of course, has an all-time great basketball program that has seen better times in other years. But we are sticking to football first and foremost. So what if the approach is of the Big Ten and the SEC, maybe it will be all-inclusive. This is what power structure football is. We're going to keep everyone, we'll support everyone, and we will determine what the leagues and the conferences and the makeup and the structure and the format looks like going forward with everyone. Or they may say, if you are not valuable enough, if you are a drag on the revenue distribution, then what good are you? See ya. So what schools, what football programs are the most in jeopardy going forward? Let's first go to the ACC, which is, of course, in serious jeopardy in and of itself. Wake Forest has 9,000 students, a 31,000-seat stadium. And when they're not playing Clemson or Florida State, they don't draw many eyeballs to the TV screens. Typically, 500,000 to 1 million people watch Wake Forest football games when they're playing a decent team in the ACC. Wake Forest has one of the worst winning percentages in the history of Power Conference football. Dave Clawson is running a fine program right now. He has maxed it out, it would appear, winning 7 or 8 games each season. They were only 4-8 this past year. So Wake Forest, they could be on the chopping block if this is the approach going forward. Boston College, does anybody care about Boston College football in the city of Boston or the surrounding areas? Boston pro sports is crazy good and crazy popular. All of the brands, all of the teams are iconic. The Patriots would have been the last to join that triumvirate of the Bruins, the Celtics, and the Red Sox, all legendary. But once you enter Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, the Patriots have joined that pantheon, and Boston College just does not move the needle at all. People don't go to the games. Who knows how much they're even paying to go to these games? And much like Wake Forest, Boston College has to be playing a major brand in the ACC to draw a decent television audience. Syracuse, they have been sub 500 generally. I'm not talking about every specific season, but overall, they have been sub 500 for 20 or 25 years since Donovan McNabb, and they were going to an Orange Bowl after the 1998 season. They have been a lousy football program. Dino Babers was winning 40-some% of his games, like 30% of his ACC games, and still didn't get fired. The expectations are low. It's difficult to recruit and sign players to Syracuse. The Carrier Dome isn't what it used to be. Is Syracuse on the chopping block? Could they be, despite their great history in the past? Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Heisman trophies, and a national championship. Syracuse. Duke. Duke's got no football fans. Mike Elko did a heck of a job there and lifted them to 8-5, 8-5. But nobody went to the games. They came within one drive of an ACC championship game. David Cutcliffe did a nice job when he finally got it rolling around 2012, 2013, 14. But again, it completely is overshadowed by basketball. On one hand, you may say, Mark, it's ridiculous because Duke is going to have a landing spot because it's Duke and Duke basketball. However, there is Villanova, there's Gonzaga, there's what used to be St. John's when they were a powerhouse in basketball. UConn, they don't play power conference football, and they've got great basketball programs that thrive. Could Duke be the next in that group? It might surprise some people that the Pitt Panthers are 3 games over 500 since 1990. That means that they've been awful. Because you pick up all these gimme wins against the FCS and the group of 5, they are well under 500 against power conference teams since 1990. Now, if you go back into tradition and history, if that counts, well, Pitt football, legendary. The list of NFL players, the NFL greats, the Heisman trophies, the national championships from Pitt, but they are archaic at this point. They're iconic, but archaic. That Tony Dorsett team in 1976, the last to win a national championship. The last time Pitt was a national power, 1981, 82, 83, in that range with Dan Marino. They did win the ACC in 2021. It also hurts that they are overshadowed by one of the iconic NFL teams in the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've got no fans. They don't go to the games. They don't have their own stadium. Pitt, could they be on the chopping block? And lastly, out of the ACC, that I believe could be in jeopardy would be SMU. They just made it from the group of 5 into power conference play, so they are basically a group of 5 that gave up their revenue rights to join the Power 5. So they were not deemed worthy enough or valuable enough to give a share to. They gave that up. And much like Pitt football, they're overshadowed by one of the most popular brands, if not the most popular in all of sports, the Dallas Cowboys. SMU, they've been a lousy team for the most part since the mid-'80s. They've rebounded in recent years. They're just getting into the Power 5. It could be a short stay. The next team we get to is the classic of the doormats in college football. And it's also emphasized and blown up by the fact that they play in the best conference in college football, which has been the best for at least 15 or 20 years. And there is no other school, no other football program, unlike what we just witnessed in the ACC, that is in jeopardy. They all have strong football programs. Even the worst programs in the SEC draw people to the television screen and draw people to the stadium. Arkansas, Mississippi State, South Carolina have nothing close to this one. Vandy, of course, we're talking about. They define doormat. The baseball, the academics are exceptional, but the football program, the baseball, the academics are exceptional. Sometimes the basketball has been in the past, but they play in a major market. But again, like Pitt, like SMU, you've got an NFL team there, so nobody cares about Vanderbilt football, especially when they're going 2-10, 3-9, 4-8 every year. Let's move to the Big 12. Baylor. Are they a media draw? They're in Waco, Texas. Who watches Baylor football games because it's Baylor? We'd have to go through our TV series to further investigate there. They've had a roller coaster of success on the field. They have had some outstanding teams. Of course, about 10 years ago, they almost made the college football playoff in 2014. They went to a Cotton Bowl that year and played Michigan State. They also played in the Fiesta Bowl the year before under Art Briles. They have, again, an up and down history in football and just don't bring much to the table in regards to cachet at the box office. Iowa State would be in the same boat. Good basketball program, usually. They are arguably, Iowa State, folks, you may not want to hear this, Iowa State fans, probably, boy, it's a close call. Oregon State's there, Indiana, Rutgers are right there, Vanderbilt as well, Wake Forest. But Iowa State's one of the 5 to 6 worst programs in the history, not right now, in the history of college football. And sure, Matt Campbell's done a heck of a job, and they're probably safe because of this recent, we'll call it a minor surge, because they're decent, they're not great. Moving through the Big 12 to Texas Tech. Talk about not playing in a media market and really not being a factor. The Mike Leach offense and that era was fun, and they're a decent program right now. They just came off a 7-6 finish, but they have never been to a major bowl game. They have never finished in the top 10. They are basically another version of Iowa State, maybe a little bit better in terms of winning percentage year after year after year, but they are just a complete no factor. And if this group gets contracted, they could be on the cutting block, as well as Houston, of course. Again, NFL city, nobody cares. Nobody cares about Houston, to the point that in the late 80s and early 90s, when Houston football was at its best, Andre Ware, David Klingler, and company lighting up scoreboards with 75, 80 points a game at times, nobody went to the games. Now they have an on-campus stadium. It's not at the Astrodome, but still, Cincinnati just came from the group of 5. It's a nice football program. They've got a nice tradition and history there, Nippert Stadium. But again, they've got the look of a group of 5 program. They still do. We expected a difficult transition for Houston, Cincinnati, and others, because that's been the history. Utah's TCU elevating had a rough start, although they've made the transition very well now. But the 2 teams that I will not put on this list, because they do have a number of items going for them that others don't, are BYU. They've got national appeal. The TV ratings have shown this. And also UCF. UCF has an enormous alumni base. They've got a big fan base. They pack out their stadium. It's a great scene there. And they're in Orlando, which does not have an NFL team, but is a major, major market with an entertainment product there that I think you've heard of. The Big Ten has a staunch story tradition, and it goes back to 1896. And many of the schools that we're going to mention, it just seems unbelievable that we could possibly contemplate this. I don't want any of this to happen. I want everyone to be included. If you've checked out the live streams and the videos in the past, I want everyone to stay in the Power 4. Everyone who's there, there's 70 right now. That includes Washington State, Oregon State, and Notre Dame. We've got 70 right now. But again, as you have heard, rumblings of paring that down to whether that's 48 or 40 or 32. And there would be more teams than this on the chopping block. But let's look at the Big Ten with Indiana, of course. They are the poster child as the worst program in the Big Ten overall, year after year after year after year. But it's a flagship school. They've got that in their favor, unlike anybody else that we've talked about to date. They're a flagship school in their state. That's meaningful. They're also a basketball powerhouse historically, but one of the worst football programs in history, and they've got no fans. No fans. The Indiana fans, speak up. Let's hear from you. Illinois, they pretty much mirror Indiana, although their tradition in football history is much better. When you think Dick Butkus, Red Grange, they had really good teams in the 80s, into the 90s, went to the Rose Bowl in 2007. That was a bit of a smoke and mirrors deal with Juice Williams. But they've pretty much been awful since about 1990, for the most part. But again, flagship school that does good numbers in basketball, and they've got a football tradition. But again, apathy has set in for a long, long time at Illinois. Brett Bielema's trying to bring it back, but he's having a difficult time. You know, we don't root here at the Voice of College Football. We cover the sport as best we can. We are impartial. We are unbiased. As best we can be. That's impossible. Completely, of course. We're flesh and blood. So we don't root necessarily, outwardly. But I got to admit, I root for this school. I root for this team. I do not want them to be extinct, but they would be a prime candidate. Used to be coached by Pat Fitzgerald, who I admired for his work on the field. This program constantly underrated. Lo and behold, 8-5 last year with a bowl win against Utah. Started off 1-11 the year before. So we know how Northwestern has been the laughingstock of college football for years and years and years. If this discussion was being had 40 years ago, this was the worst program in college football, not even close. But since about 1995, they've been pretty darn good. Most of the time, they've been competitive and good. But the TV draw is minuscule. They get shoved on the Big Ten Network as much as anyone, not named Rutgers. And they basically have no fans. They don't draw any fans to the games. Ryan Field is a mausoleum. It's just not a good look for the Big Ten, and they don't play up to Big Ten standards in terms of a draw. Northwestern. And then we've got Rutgers. They have sucked forever. They are one of the worst power conference teams of all time. They've won nothing. Oh yeah, they did win that first football game ever in 1869. Yes, and claim a national championship. Yeah, Rutgers, they've are undergoing a bit of a renaissance under Greg Schiano, if you want to call 7-6 with a bowl victory. A renaissance, still just 3-6 in the Big Ten. So again, I think Rutgers survives because they're a flagship of the state of New Jersey. Big populace there. There is a connection to New York City, although it really doesn't run to Rutgers. It's more of the New York City fan base being connected to Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State in terms of alumni. But Rutgers would have to be considered here. As I mentioned a minute ago, there have been figures thrown out to size it down from 70 to, let's say, 48 or 40 or 32. These were 16 candidates. That would only get us down to 54. The chopping block could be quite severe in college football if the retraction that's being discussed and talked about out there could possibly happen. If each individual football program in school is evaluated just based on its value as a TV partner, look out, it could get ugly. Your thoughts, your comments, your perspective down below. Please subscribe, like the video right here at the Voice of College Football.